All right, so in this video, I'm going to be just talking about how we tune our instruments, some different safety things to keep in mind, and just hopefully give you enough background information so that when we try to tackle this on our own, we feel more comfortable and we feel like we have all the information that we need. So tuning our instruments, it's something that all string players have to learn how to do eventually. You guys are just kind of getting a little bit of a head start. We usually don't start having students tune their own instruments until late 7th grade, early 8th grade, but the current situation kind of necessitates that you guys have to learn how to tune your instruments now, which is going to be great. Once you get into middle school, you guys will be pros at this. So just some quick information that will help us tune our instruments. These are all of the different names of the strings, the different pitches that the strings will be tuned to. So for violin, from low, meaning the biggest string, the lowest string, the lowest string is G, then it goes D, then it's A, and then it's E. And then viola and cello have the same strings, so C, G, D, and A. And then bass has E, A, D, and G. It's actually just the reverse of violin strings. So you don't have to memorize all those right now. To start off with, we'll probably just start tuning our Ds. So we'll get really comfortable tuning our D, and then in our book, we'll start out just reading open D and learning how to play some different notes just on our open D. And then later on, we'll add in the rest of the strings. So we'll learn how to tune all of them eventually. Once we learn one, the other ones are pretty similar. The higher the string is, the more likely the string is to break, just because those strings are thinner. So we'll probably wait to tune our E's, especially for violin, later. And then for viola and cello, A strings aren't quite as likely as E's to break, but they're still more likely than our lower strings. So we'll kind of ease into that. We'll start off tuning our D string. Let's go to the next slide. So some different tuning apps that we can use. In class, we will use an app called Tuner Ninja, and it's just a website. You can just search Tuner Ninja in Google and it'll pop up. It's free. It works really well. So I'll be using that in class for us. I'll share my screen and have Tuner Ninja up and just kind of go around the class and have people try tuning their instruments in class. We'll do that a little bit later in the week. But if you wanted to get an app to use on like your phone, I use ClearTune on my phone. It's a really nice app, but there's so many different tuning apps out there. You can use pretty much anything you want. And any tuner will work. It doesn't have to be specific to strings. And I've had people ask me, I have a guitar tuner, will that work? Or I have, this tuner that my brother used on his trumpet, will that work? Yes, any tuner works, as long as it will pick up the sound and will be able to tell you what pitch you're playing. Any tuner will work. If it's specific to strings, it might be a little bit more technically correct, but it's not super important at this point that we're perfectly in tune. We just want to get as close as we can. All right, and finally, some things to keep in mind as we're learning how to tune. Strings do break easily. I've been playing string instruments since I was in the 4th grade, and I still sometimes accidentally break strings just by turning the pegs a little bit too far. So that probably is going to happen at some point, and it's okay. But we need to be as super careful as we possibly can. The smaller the adjustment, the better, especially when it comes to our tuning pegs. So our tuning pegs are the ones up at the very top of our instrument, and they make really big adjustments. So if you turn them just a little bit too far, that string gets a little bit too tight, it can snap really easily. And like I said, that's more likely on our higher strings, but low strings can snap as well. So we just need to make sure that we're being super careful when we're using the tuning pegs. And there's some ways that we can try and keep our instruments from going very far out of tune. So our string instruments are really susceptible to environmental changes. So if you keep them in a room that's too cold, they're likely to get out of tune, or if you keep them in a room that's too hot. If they're too cold, then the strings will likely be sharp, and then if they're too hot, then the strings will likely be flat. We'll talk a little bit about what that means in a second. So if we keep our instruments in, a nice medium temperature room, that'll help them from going out of tune. Also making sure that we don't hit them on stuff. So if we hit the scroll or the pegs on stuff, that can jar the strings out of tune really quickly. So we need to be really careful, making sure we're taking good care of our instruments and being super careful with them. And that means, you know, not letting other people touch your instruments. So your instruments have been rented out to you from the district, or, you know, your personal instrument is just for you to play. So make sure that even though it might be kind of fun to show younger siblings, you know, what we're doing in class and try and teach them, let's just hold off on that for a while until we're more comfortable with our instruments. Because it can really affect the intonation of the instrument. Bridges can pop off, strings can pop off. So we just want to be as super careful as we possibly can with our instruments. And then always use the fine tuners before the pegs. So the fine tuners are the little tuners down at the very bottom of our instrument. So these little ones down here. So we always want to make sure that if we're making small adjustments that we're using the fine tuners. And, you know, for the most part, you should be good just using the fine tuners. You shouldn't have super big adjustments to make, especially if you're taking good care of the instrument. You don't want to use the tuning pegs for big adjustments. These are for little adjustments. These are only for big adjustments. So always try to use the fine tuners before the tuning pegs. That'll help you. It'll help you not break the strings as often. And if a string does break, it's probably going to happen at some point if you keep on playing strings. It's not a big deal. We just replace the string. So if you're renting a district instrument, then let me know, and I can help you figure that out. If you're using your own personal instrument, any of our local music stores will carry strings, and you can just take them in there, and they can even replace the string for you. So it's not a big deal if you break a string, especially right now since we're not using all of the strings yet. If one breaks, you'll probably still be able to participate in everything we're doing in class, but you know, just try and get it fixed as soon as you can. All right, so now I'll just kind of give you a demo of how we tune our instruments, what it looks like, and we'll just kind of walk through that really quickly. So the tuning app that I'm using is Clear Tuner, and you can't really see it on the screen, but it just has this kind of dial here that tells you what note you're playing, and then it has an arrow right here that turns green when you're playing in tune. So that's what I'm going to be using in this video. Like I said, in class we'll use Tuner Ninja. So that's just an online website. It's free. You can just Google it and it should pop up. So that's the one that we'll be using in class. But for right now, I'm just going to use Clear Tune since it's just my app that I have on my phone and it's just easy access. So the strings I'll be kind of showing us today are our G, our D, and our A string. We'll just leave C for a little bit since C is unique to just cello and viola. So first, I'll just start with my G. So what you do when you tune a cello is you want to always make sure that you're using the fine tuners as often as you can. So for most adjustments, they should be small. They shouldn't be super large adjustments. So you should be able to just make do with your fine tuners. So how it's going to look, you're going to kind of do what we call cello yoga. So your left arm's going to go over and is going to do the tuning, and your right hand is going to be doing the plucking of the string. So when the tuner tells you that you're flat, that's going to mean that the pitch is below the pitch that you want your string to be tuned to. So if I was tuning my G and it was telling me that I was playing an F sharp, that would mean that my string was flat because the pitch is below what I want it to be. So then I would need to turn my fine tuner to the right. Because if your string is flat, you need to tighten it. So you'll turn it to the right, righty-tighty. And then if it's too tight or sharp, then you need to turn it to the left. So lefty-loosey. So if the tuner's telling you that you're sharp, turn the fine tuner to the left. And if it's telling you that you're flat, turn the fine tuner to the right. So let's see where my G is at right now. So it's saying that my G is just a little bit flat. So that means I'm going to turn my fine tuner to the right to tighten my string just a little bit. And you want to do really small adjustments. So you don't even have to do a full turn, just a little turn and then check it. All right, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. There we go. And so like just what I did, you want to do small adjustments, so smaller than you even think that you might need to do, and then just check it constantly. Because if you do really big adjustments really fast, you might miss the pitch, and that's also how we can break strings. So small adjustments, checking constantly to make sure that we're not overshooting what note we're trying to go for. All right, so the next string that we're going to tune is our D. And I did something goofy with my D. I messed with the tuning peg back here. So let's see what pitch my D is actually at right now. So it's telling me that my D is actually playing an A. And that's quite a big difference. So it's actually the A below the D. So if you listen. So that's just one step up from my G. So it's pretty far out of tune. So I'll need to use my tuning peg to fix that. What we do with our tuning peg is we make really, really small adjustments and check it constantly, just like we did with our fine tuner. We want to make just really small movements. If we overshoot with these pegs, the strings will break. So I want to do super small adjustment as possible. So I'm going to make sure that I'm grabbing onto the right peg, and I am. This peg up here is my D peg. And so I'm playing in an A right now, so that means that my string is flat, so I need to tighten it. So I'll tighten it just a little bit. And it moved up just about just a little bit. So that's good. I just want to make small adjustments. I'm at a B now, so I've raised it just about a step. So super small adjustments. So I'm like hardly turning this at all. And then sometimes it'll slip. So that's a good teachable moment. I'm glad that it slipped. So especially with our low strings, the pegs will slip. So what happens when our pegs slip, I'm going to put my end pin in so you can actually see this. So sometimes our pegs will slip. And now my string is super loose. It looks like it's about to come off. Don't worry. All we have to do is tighten the peg again so that the string isn't super loose. And then bracing your hand against the opposite side of the scroll. So this is the tuning peg I'm going to be turning. So I have my hand on the opposite side of the scroll. I'm going to push in just a little bit. Because what happened is the peg kind of slipped out. So the pegs do come out. You don't want them to come out. But sometimes they do just accidentally slip out. So you just need to push the peg back in a little bit and then tighten the string some more. Ooh, there goes my end pin. All right, and I have my string at about an A again. So this is about where I started. And so now we just have to tune it again. So what I might need to do is push in just a little bit as I'm turning my peg backwards. But that is totally common. It happens, especially on cello. Cello seems to be the culprit with pegs slipping out. It's just because they're a little bit bigger. So that might happen. Just super gently press it in. Don't press too hard, because I have seen scrolls snap off before, and that's a big repair, and we don't want to have to deal with that. So just a little gentle push in, and then just turn the peg back a little bit and go back to tuning like we did. Super small adjustments. Just kind of gently pushing in as you're turning the peg back so the peg doesn't slip out again. And I just need to get it up to a D. I'm going to stop right before I get to the D though, and then go down to my fine tuner so that I'm not overshooting my pitch. Push back a little bit more. All right, one more little twist. And then I'm going to go back to my fine tuner. All right, just a hair flat. Just little small adjustments. And there we are. So that was a really great teachable moment. I'm glad that my peg slipped out. So just gentle pushes in until the peg kind of sticks, and then you should be good to go. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. Ask in class. We'll do a lot of practice on this over the next couple of weeks. The first part of every class will be dedicated to tuning at least a couple of our strings. We'll probably start out just tuning our Ds, and then we'll add some more strings as we're going through our book. So we'll get a lot of practice in this. I know it's new right now and it seems complicated and kind of scary, but the more we practice it, the easier it'll get. And before you know it, tuning is going to be just, second nature to you. So if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you back in class.